Hello, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Tommy Mitchell from the Mental Health and Wellness Show. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Kylie Feller. She is a clinical counselor and life coach. She has worked in mental health and the well-being field for 10 years. She has helped people overcome and heal addictions and trauma while supporting others with dating and increasing their self-love and well-being. Her passion for helping people comes from her own experience of healing her childhood trauma and moving from surviving to thriving. I love that. She specializes in internal family systems therapy, which helps people understand and heal different aspects of themselves so that they can live their life in alignment with their true self. She is a yoga teacher and digital nomad who enjoys traveling around the world as she inspires others to heal and live their best life. Kylie, welcome. Please introduce yourself further.
Yeah.
2 cents.
Hi, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, that kind of sums up. I'm super passionate about helping people. A lot of my passion comes from my own experience with hardship when I was younger. Though I really don't believe any of us make it out of this world without some kind of trauma when we're younger, no matter what, right? So a lot of my life I have dedicated to understanding how to heal trauma, why people do what they do, and what makes this life worth living. Like, what's the good stuff, like how do we get into alignment with that, which has really led me into what I want to talk to you today about and with your listeners is internal family systems.
Why don't we start off with a definition of that for our listeners?
Yeah, so internal family systems, also like IFS for short, is a kind of newer therapeutic model that was put together by Richard Schwartz, though the ideas behind it have been around for a long time. So with IFS, the idea is that we have multiple parts or subpersonalities within our mind. So not just one mind, right? That'd be hard if we were angry or we got in a fight. That's not all of us, right? So this theory looks at these different parts of us that a lot of us can relate to. Part of me wants to do this, another part of me wants to do this.
Yes.
Right? So what this theory does is it helps us understand these parts of us, sometimes like our anxiety or our extreme parts, like our inner critic, the parts of us that feel abandoned, the angry parts. So a lot of times in our culture and different therapeutic approaches, we've labeled parts as good or bad, and then we try and get rid of the ones that we label as bad. Where in IFS, there is no bad parts. They all have a good intention. They're all doing something for a reason. And if we can just turn towards them with compassion and curiosity, we can help to understand and then heal them. And that's the main part also is like we have these parts, but we have this true self. And the part that is the true self is compassionate, it's curious, it's calm, it's connected, it has clarity, it can heal. So when we turn towards these parts that have caused so much kind of what seems like damage in our lives, to seek to understand them and heal them, create this opportunity for harmony within ourselves. So that's kind of like a bit Cole's Notes version of IFS and how that works.
No, that's great. So for listeners, just know that we all have it within us to be good, to be caring, to be kind. It's sometimes life happens and we respond to life in a different way. And then we may act in a way that perhaps had a purpose at that point. Perhaps it was a defense mechanism or something to get you through. But as you grow up and time goes by, those mechanisms no longer serve you and you should adjust.
Yeah, exactly. When you get to know these different parts of you, like your inner critic, it's often trying to motivate you. And if you really get to know it and understand when it was formed and why it was formed, a lot of them, your inner critic will say, well, I'm going to criticize you so nobody else criticizes you. So you'll never get bullied or hurt or told that you're bad again because I'm going to do that for you.
So in a way, is it that you're saying the inner critic is almost like a teacher?
Yeah. It's like, but the thing is, if you really ask your inner critic, does it want to be hurting you? Does it want to do damage? It does not, and oftentimes when it adopted that strategy, you were quite young and that was all it knew. And so if you can work to understand and get to really hear the good intention that it has, you can help to unburden whatever kind of pain it's holding. And that's another thing is like our inner critic, they're usually protecting younger parts of us that are called exiles. And exiles are parts of us when we're younger that we experience shame or guilt and it's too much. It's too much for us to feel at a young age. So we develop these parts called protectors. So an inner critic would very much be a protector, and it stops you from ever feeling that pain that the exile is holding. So it'll maneuver your life around that, or different triggers that'll get activated. So it's those two systems are working together. And so if you can understand the part that it's trying to heal, you can go in and actually heal that critic from the truth.
Wow, that's deep. That's probably the first time I've heard it explained this way. And I'm pretty nerdy, so that's good. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. So you mentioned the term true self, right? So can you perhaps flesh it out? What exactly is true self?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, kind of like with the IFS model, we've got like the exiles. I mentioned the parts of us when we're younger that are holding the pain. And then we develop these protectors or managers, like our inner critic or angry parts or anxious parts, or just general managers that keep our life going. And then we have the true self. So when we're younger, our true self isn't quite formed well enough to lead our life, which is why our parts are taking more of the responsibility and trying to keep us safe until we're old enough and we're formed enough to be able to go back and feel that pain and heal it. Because for the true self, nothing will overwhelm the true self, but parts will be overwhelmed by pain. So if you try and go back and witness a trauma from a part, even if it has the best intentions, it can overwhelm it, which is why the system is so protective and so scared about any part going back other than the true self, and why sometimes they won't trust you. You can have self-like parts that feel very compassionate or caring or empathetic, but it's, again, not the true self. The true self, a good way to kind of feel it is, even though it's this healing agent, it actually has no agenda, and it can't do anything other than like witness space and heal. It can't force parts out of the way. It can't force things to heal. It's not going to maneuver its way in there. It's actually the system has to trust that you're there. So part of that is like how you can tell if you have your true self there is when you think about a part of you, like your inner critic, and you ask yourself, how do I feel toward this part? You might have an activation of different parts like, oh, I don't like that part. I want to get rid of that part. Or you might have the parts that are in alignment with it. And so what you can do is you can ask those parts to give you some space and trust you. And when you ask those parts to step back and keep asking yourself how you feel towards it, and get other ones to step back until you feel curious and you feel like it's coming from your heart. And there's this bit of openness to understanding the inner critic, then you've got truth. It's like that's the first sign of it. And then again, there's passion as you start to understand how this part has worked so hard to protect you so long. And then there's a calmness and it's like a centeredness, and there's more clarity and understanding that comes with it. And there's connection, and there's confidence and courage. And those are kind of like the A's of the true self.
Well, I love food, so I often have analogies with food. As you were talking, I'm thinking the true self is like the cream in the Boston cream donut. It's like in the middle, and the parts are all around it. It's soft and gooey.
It's
not recommending eating them. I actually don't like them, but that was the analogy.
That's the image your parts are giving you of the true self, like that creamy center.
Creamy, gooey, means no harm.
Another analogy sometimes that we like to use is like feeling the true self is like the sun, and your parts are kind of clouds. So for lots of people, when I'm talking about the true self, you might be able to connect with it. Another part like, no, I don't feel that. I don't have that true self, right? But it's there. It might just be buried. And sometimes if you can imagine when you're wanting to work hard, that the clouds just separate just a little bit, so you can just get a tiny ray of sunshine on the part that you want to understand.
Definitely. And why do you think some individuals have problems with connecting with their true self? You mentioned that it's buried, but why?
Yeah, and that's because of adverse experiences in life, often younger, kind of like trauma, where parts have had to take over. And though everybody has a little bit of it, a lot of times, like if I work with somebody who has a more serious kind of like mental health struggle or has been through kind of complex trauma, it's buried even farther. And that's just because parts have worked so hard to protect, and there's so many exiles. And so any movement in the system could make things worse. Mm-hmm. So they're scared even of like healing, because to heal takes
you have to expose.
Yeah, you have to. And that is scary. If you ask, like, a big kind of question, if a part is like not wanting to move, you can ask it, what is it scared will happen if it doesn't what it does?
Yeah, analogy that came to mind. This time it wasn't food. It's like a Band-Aid. And then you eventually have to remove it to let the wound get some air. You can't suffocate it forever. It has a purpose at the beginning, which is stop bacteria, viruses from getting in while your body has a chance to heal.
Yeah.
But it's not meant to be there forever because it actually can do more harm.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. But taking it off is really scary for a lot of parts. And again, like I said, if you take that Band-Aid off and say you've got a wound and you don't have the right doctor there.
Yeah.
So, your leg's broken and you've brought your leg to a doctor of philosophy rather than the doctor that can really help, right?
Yeah,
so
no kidding.
the parts need to make sure that it really is true self, that they're to witness that and help.
Exactly. So for listeners, think about you have a wound, a Band-Aid, and it's on with a really hairy arms. Do you want to just yank that Band-Aid off? Probably not. It will hurt. You'll get a wax job that looks horrible in the wound. Rather, what happens, we kind of add a little bit of water. We kind of tease this one corner and see how we feel. Okay, I can still breathe the other corner until we have that little piece hanging on. Then we go, boop. It's the same idea.
Yeah. And we never do anything in IFS without permission.
Yes.
So all of those protectors, we don't, they have all the power, and we never go deeper than we don't have permission. So you're always asking, do you step aside? Can I get to know this part? And they can say yes or no. And there is no right or wrong answer. That's it. And whoever you sit with, when they say no, they won't let you go deeper, is the one that you get no. That's the one that's your passion and needs to see that you're really there.
Definitely. Now, is it possible, this question is, think of life on a timeline, because often with trauma work, we have the client outline parts of their life that they can remember, traumatic events, whether the big T or little t, put it out there. Is it possible? Does one have to heal in chronological order? Or can it be like you could heal the 3-year-old self, heal the 30-year-old self, you heal the 15-year-old self and the 60-year-old self?
Yeah, it's all over the place sometimes, and that's really me. When I'm guiding somebody in, I have no idea. And even for my own self, I have an IFS therapist too, and I have no idea what parts of me are protecting. Sometimes, it's almost more shocking sometimes when it is a version that's whole pain than a version of me. But it's wherever the parts take you.
Love it. It's like a mystery. It's like a egg hunt.
Yeah, it keeps you curious. You can never make an assumption. And that's another thing. Parts of you might know what you need to do, but that's just a part that thinks it knows. You need to actually check. So if you have an idea of I can't be in a relationship because I have this stuff with my parents, or my last relationship was really abusive, so I know that's why. You don't really know completely. You might have an idea, but you have to check with that part that's holding you back. Why? What's holding it back? And that really helps to stay in curiosity, is don't assume you know anything.
Yes. Yeah. I love that curiosity piece. It's like peeling back an onion. It's like one layer. Okay. Gotta go next. So you might cry. Gotta go next.
Yeah, it's like an onion, and you peel it, it's like, oh my God, it's an orange. And you put oh no, it's a grapefruit. You're like, oh, now it's an onion again.
I know. I'm not even hungry and I'm talking about food. Anyway. All right. So those of you who are listening, I know this might seem like, oh my goodness, especially if you're not used to these conversations. And I get it. You asked me 2 years ago about this or what we're going to do later, which is meditation. I'll be like, whatever, not interested. This is some hokey pokey nonsense. Well, I ate my words. So, and I'm science-based, so it's not hokey pokey. It truly makes a difference. And as Kylie said, it's it's an adventure. It's like that Forrest Gump line, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you get. Again, food. My body is telling me something. What is it telling me? Do I need iron? What do I need? Stop eating so much watermelon? I don't know.
Can't be that.
Yeah.
So, this theory actually is evidence-based. So Richard Swartz, the founder, has worked really hard to get this into the scientific field, to put it through empirically validated tests and peer-reviewed. So I know a lot of people, when they hear it, they go, oh, that's too spiritual. Sometimes the thing is, being human is spiritual to a certain extent, even if you just want to sit science of it.
Yeah.
And even if you go back to as far as Freud, our original kind of psychologist, a lot of stuff is happening in the unconscious mind.
100%.
And the unconscious runs on a bit of a different script than the logical mind that we're used to, problem solving and this and that. But to do deep healing, we need to go back into the right brain. We need to go into the creativity where things are communicated through stories and metaphors and sensations, and it doesn't follow a proper timeline.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of, for those people people, like, it isn't just this spiritual kind of thing. There is a lot of science behind it, and you can definitely approach it from that.
Definitely. So for someone who is listening and they want to prepare themselves for this process, right? This journey of healing, what practical steps can they take? Let's say they have time before they see an IFS therapist, for example. What would you tell? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think starting to get really curious about what's going on the inside. We spend a lot of our life outside and looking to like control things out here. And even I ask a lot of people, what is your self-care like? And they're like, diet and exercise. I'm like, okay, but what about the mental and emotional self? And so I feel like IFS is a really nice way to work on those parts of yourself. So I noticed that I've got some extra anxiety that might be a little extreme for what my life is, or I have this stronger inner critic, or I have this anger that I've never allowed to come out, or I have this abandoned child, or like, I have all these different parts. Being curious and starting to journal, starting to take note of these different parts and committing to getting to know them a little bit better. So that can be just sitting and inviting them in and noticing. And at the end, I'll kind of walk you through a meditation on how to do that. But even journaling. And some people find like use different pens. So purple pen for your inner critic. And then if you want to answer it, use a blue pen, one that represents like the self. And you might notice other parts come in, and it doesn't have to make sense. Again, we're working with that right brain. We're working with the creativity, the storytelling. Just stay curious and opening up the space to get to know yourself better.
I love the right brain, the creative part. That's a part of me that lay dormant for probably through most of my medical school training and residency because it was so left brain. But now just embracing that creative side, that just makes me happy. So y'all that listening, journaling, using different colored pens. That's one of my favorite. And then I must add stickers. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta bejewel your notebook. And a nice pen, like one with a little poof on the end.
Yeah.
Go to the dollar store, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, wherever you are. Go get one. Amazon, not to support big Amazon taking over the world. Anyway, but yeah, no, I love it. Getting in that place where you're ready to receive and be open. And I also would think another thing that would help is reducing distractions. Because we live in a very busy world.
Yeah. So if you're going to sit down and get to know your part, and I will say though, as you start to do this work more, you can do it in the moment too. Like sometimes if I feel like a part of me is starting kind of hijack or take over, that's making me like anxious or take me out of the moment. What's really beautiful is you can just ask that part to trust me. You just give me a little bit of space right now. And it's so interesting that in IFS, they found if you just ask a part to give you some space, they often do. It's just that acknowledgement in that moment. So if you're a really stressful day and you're running around and you don't have that minute, just asking your brain, like, can you guys just trust? Can you give me a little bit of room? And later, I promise I'm going to journal or I'm going to meditate with you. But right now, please give me that space. And it often they will.
Yeah, I love that word acknowledgement. You need to acknowledge the feelings that is going through you. Don't shove them away. It's there for a reason. Your body's trying to tell you something.
Yeah. It's trying to communicate all the time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Love it. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so they can check out my website, which is just www.kyliefeller.com, or they can send me a email at info@kyliefeller.com. My website has links to my social media on Facebook or Instagram. Anybody's welcome to message me through that if they're just curious or they want more information. I do offer free discovery calls. So if you're just curious and you'd like to know a little bit more, feel free to reach out.
Love it. Now, Kylie, would you be so kind to share your practice with us, with the listeners?
Yeah, I'd love to do this. So I'm just going to kind of take you on a guided journey to your internal family. And I'm refraining from using the word meditation because a lot of people actually get really triggered by this word. So all we're doing is getting to know some of your parts. That's it. So if you can just get comfortable, if that's possible, if you're not in a place where it's safe to kind of do that, maybe just listen and come back to this. You don't want to do it while you're driving or doing anything kind of complex or there's safety around you. But if you can, we're going to get comfortable. So either seated or you can lay down or just stop what you're doing. Just taking a couple nice deep breaths. So we're just going to breathe through the nose into the belly. And then slowly exhale the air out. Another nice deep inhale through the nose into the belly. And slow exhale. Just taking another nice deep breath like this, just allowing your breath to take you into your internal space, so into your mind, into your body, just for a couple moments, letting go of the outside world. And just starting to scan through your body, maybe starting at your toes, and just coming from a place of curiosity, noticing areas of your body that might have more ease, areas that might feel more dense. Sometimes there's tightness in the hips or the back. And just noticing the heart. Oftentimes we have a lot of different protectors around our heart. And just being curious about who might be residing there. And just noticing your mind. And just becoming that curious observer. I'm going to invite you to bring in a part that you are curious about. So maybe it is an inner critic. Maybe it's your anxiety. Maybe it's feelings of the part that's making you feel overwhelmed. Just any part you're curious about. And as you invite it in, just noticing any shifts in your body. So noticing maybe you feel it over your heart, or your back, your hands. Just noticing any shifts. I know sometimes it feels like a guess. Whatever your guess is correct. So just inviting in, and as you notice it kind of showing up in your body, or maybe it's in your mind, or maybe it's even just around you, noticing how you feel towards this part. I know with this question, oftentimes it can activate other parts. And just stay curious as you notice them. Maybe there's parts that don't like this part, parts that are in alignment with it, parts that are frustrated with it or scared of it. Just acknowledging them all. And if it's possible, just seeing if they are willing to trust you, to just spend a little time with this part that you'd like to get to know better. And again, letting them know this isn't to let this part just take over. It's just to get to know it so you can help it, so it doesn't feel like it has to do that anymore. Also, just letting these other protectors know that they don't have to go far. If they feel like they need to step in at any time, they can. And if they don't want to give you any space, or they don't feel comfortable with that, that's completely okay too. And you can just spend some time getting to know their fears. And if it feels okay, if they're able to give you that space and you've got some curiosity coming from your heart, even just a sliver, turn your attention back to that original part you wanted to get to know. And as you do that, see if that part can notice that you're there with it. That it's not alone. See if it can notice just that little bit of curiosity, that little ray of sunshine coming from your heart. And we'll just stay here for a couple moments, and you can ask it if there's anything it would like to share with you, or it would like you to know about it. It might want to share with you when it was formed. You might want to share its role it has in your system. And it might share what it's scared will happen if it doesn't do what it does. Just staying with it for a moment, not forcing it to do anything, but just letting it know that you're there and that you want to know about it. Just thanking this part for whatever it shared with you. Sending it some gratitude that feels authentic. And just letting this part know that you'll be back if that's something you feel called to do or promise you feel you could make. As you walk kind of back away from this part, just thanking and noticing any of the other protectors that gave you some space so you could be with this part. Just making sure that they're okay with that interaction. Just sending them some gratitude again for trusting you. We'll bring your attention back to your breath. Taking a nice deep inhale through the nose, into the belly, slowly letting the air go. Another nice deep inhale. Slow exhale. Just bringing your awareness back into your body. And when you feel ready, you can slowly flutter your eyes open and ground them to something in the room. And hopefully that process of meeting your parts is something that you feel open and curious about doing.
Thank you so much. So with that, this is Dr. Mitchell, your host on the Mental Health and Wellness Show.